Even to the untrained eye, it was clear. Jared Remy, now serving a life sentence for murder, was a voracious steroid consumer. The son of famed Red Sox announcer Jerry Remy went from a normal-looking teenager to a bulky brute. And while no official link has been made between Remy's drug use and his violent behavior, it led us to wonder whether the two could be connected. Even Jared Remy's father wondered the same thing. Here he is discussing his son's steroid use on WEEI 2 months before Jared Remy pled guilty to murder.
Oh, I'm not silly enough to say that he wasn't using steroids. Obviously he was, and it's something he started, right after high school, and we had many talks about it, and how why it's not good and why you shouldn't be doing this.
Well, in this week's Focus Report, we're looking at the significant risks associated with steroids and the powerful allure of performance-enhancing drugs. WGBH News reporter Adam Riley has our story.
Total Performance Sports in Everett is a gym for serious weightlifters. People who compete nationally and hoist weights that would make casual lifters quail. Owner CJ Murphy says when you're that motivated, substances like anabolic steroids and human growth hormone have a natural appeal.
Athletes are always going to look to get an edge. One of the things that people report when using them is that they feel better. The mindset's a little bit different, where you feel more able to focus on your workout.
Murphy doesn't condone the use of banned substances to build muscle and burn fat, but he notes that in other contexts, they're perfectly legal.
A lot of progressive doctors are now prescribing very mild doses of these things, and people are reporting that they're sleeping better, they're looking younger, their skin is tightening up, they don't feel like their joints don't hurt as much, and they're able to run around and play with their grandkids.
And he scoffs at the idea that steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs make users like Jared Remy go haywire.
If you take some, you're going to turn to this wild, raving maniac that's going to go out on an axe murdering spree instantly and kill everybody in front of you. That's simply not true.
According to McLean Hospital psychiatrist Harrison Pope, who's been researching steroid use for years, that skepticism is valid to a point.
90% of guys who take steroids have very few behavioral effects, but a minority, a small minority of guys have severe behavioral effects. It is not purely explainable on the basis of your personality or your environment.
What's more, Pope says the long-term physical risk is considerable, with cardiovascular issues topping the list. And the scope of the problem is surprisingly large.
Between 2.9 and 4.0 million American men have used steroids at some time in their lives. And that would mean that about 1 million American men have experienced steroid dependence. That's comparable to the number of American men who are positive for HIV, or comparable to the number of American men who have type 1 diabetes.
In part, Pope says that's because steroids are remarkably effective.
A guy who goes to the gym on a rather lackadaisical basis, smokes cigarettes, drinks too much, and takes steroids can still exceed the most dedicated, most gifted, most hardworking athlete who does not take steroids. It is a simple fact of biology.
And he adds, popular culture continually tells men to get bigger and stronger.
Here, for example, is G.I. Joe as he appeared in 1982. This is the G.I. Joe grunt. By 1997, the G.I. Joe grunt has become the G.I. Joe Extreme, with biceps that are almost as big as his stomach.
On that point, gym owner C.J. Murphy agrees. When people choose to use steroids, they're taking their cues from society at large.
The public would love to see somebody doing a 40-yard dash in 3 seconds. They would love to see somebody that was 5'2" dunking a basketball. Everybody wants to see the leather knocked off a baseball.
And until that changes, the widespread use of steroids probably won't. There are some really interesting cultural dynamics at work here. Dr. Pope has done some other research which has found that in Western countries like America, countries in Western Europe, the average man believes that his body should have about 20 to 30 pounds more muscle than it actually does. In contrast, the Asian men that Dr. Pope looked at in those studies were perfectly comfortable with their body the way it was.
So Are these addictive in any way once you start taking them?
According, again, to Dr. Pope, not in the way that something like alcohol or something like cocaine is, but he did mention research which has shown that adult male hamsters, if given the opportunity to self-administer testosterone by using their nose to, poke a dosing device, will actually self-administer to the point of death. So if not addictive in the same way as alcohol and cocaine, then not a neutral substance either.
All right, Adam, thanks for that. Well, my next guest belongs to a world where steroids run rampant, but says he's been able to succeed without artificial enhancement. Christian Mady is a bodybuilder and bodybuilding coach. Welcome to Greater Boston.
Thank you.
So you do not use steroids, human growth hormones, nothing, and yet you're a bodybuilder.
That's actually a key point, and thanks for having me, that people tend to lump all pharmaceutical enhancements into just steroids and make it a specter. None of it. I think that there's a lot of logical confusion as to what people mean when they say one thing versus another.
Do you agree with what the doctor in Adam's piece said, that a sloth, a slack-off, who doesn't really have a regular gym routine and takes steroids can probably outdo you in a couple of
maybe
months?
by his own report. I severely doubt that he would actually excel beyond someone who has a logical plan, or someone who's focused, researched. I think that there's a lot of myth in that direction toward these drugs. I think, there's studies as recent as 2007, 2009 to show that it's the highly educated user who is more drawn to steroids.
What do you tell the people that you coach when they look at your physique and you say, I don't use steroids? What do you tell them? How do you convince them not to do it?
They rarely look at my physique. They usually they look at someone else's physique, and I have to tell them.
That's you, right?
That's sort of me right there.
Wow.
So yeah, when they see this, people's logical conclusion is, you must have used something. If people want to think that there's one degree of flattery and one degree of insult to that comment. But I tell people I'm not anti-steroids, I'm anti-stupidity. Yeah. That really, the point of advocacy shouldn't be about pro or con. The drug war has failed us, and I don't think applying it to steroids or pharmaceuticals is really going to help us. So it's really about, hey, let's look, let's learn, let's observe. All
right, I want to bring Gary Sipperstein into the conversation. He's the director of the Center for Social Development and Education at UMass Boston. And you co-authored a report on steroid use, and you found some things that might be contrary to people's common perceptions. What did you find?
The key is there's misperceptions out there.
Like what?
Like they look at college ball, and they look at professional, and they say, it's a big problem. But the public does not believe that high school kids take steroids. And the question is, you want to ask the public, well, when does it begin? And we did focus groups throughout the year. It's not just bodybuilding. It's getting the edge on getting the scholarship, getting the edge in football, getting the edge in baseball. So the key is, what's the message that we're giving the kids in high school? So for us, the issue begins at high school and even middle school.
Well, what did you find out about the effects on adolescents, in particular, of taking steroids? Did you find that kids had roid rage and that kind of thing? What were the effects?
Well, first of all, the study focused on what do the families think and what does the public think. But all of the literature shows clearly that, and we heard it on the screen, cardiovascular problems, roid rage, and I don't think we really know how much that happens at the high school level, at the adolescent level.
I think we do know. I think that it's been proven in countless documentation that steroid use, testosterone, these tickle the same opiate centers as, say, heroin. We do know. We know very well the levels of psychological addiction, but extends far beyond just steroids and growth hormone, that any positive return loop is going to cause an addict. So we do have to look far beyond this debate, and I think one of the failings in this debate is that people try to microcosm it. Maybe that's the problem in high schools, is that there is this segmentation of, drinking, steroids, whatever.
But the key to the problem is alcohol use. CDC says 70% of the kids today are on alcohol. Marijuana, over 40%. But the kids will tell you, hey, I had a couple of drinks, or marijuana, because it's a sort of in drug, or in
social
thing.
norm.
It's a social norm. Kids don't tell kids.
They don't admit it.
That they're taking steroids.
How did they get access to them?
Go on the internet.
That would be the obvious conclusion. I think that one thing we have to look at, too, is, I mean, you can see it in the Jared Remy case. The most common steroid user is neither a pro athlete, nor an amateur athlete, nor a teen, nor a college student. It's educated 30 to 45 adult men with graduate school level educations. Really, we're looking at the money holders. So when you look at kids who have it, I have no data to support this, but I'm willing to bet that there has to be a money connection in there somewhere, whether there's they come from a wealthier family, whether they may not be wealthy themselves but have access to someone who can supply it. I think that there's something we're missing innately in that chain.
Isn't there some hypocrisy in this, too? Because people they intentionally turned a blind eye to it. I don't know about high school kids, but, you know, people wanted to see A-Rod succeed.
That's
they
right.
wanted to see Roger Clemens succeed. And then they get, you know, well, I'm kind of bummed out about that. But really, they were so thrilled to see them get to that point.
And the problem we have there is the media plays it up as cheating, not the health concerns, and not with the focus on adolescents. So the public throughout thinks that the media coverage of sports people encourages, not discourages, kids from taking steroids. We got the opposite going on.
All right.
But is the use is epidemic mean that there's consequences that are epidemic? And that's the thing that I think that we get. That's a trap, another trap that we're caught in. I think that we can't, by trying to boil this down to just its medical impact, I think we're actually losing those exact people who we're discussing.
What's the message we give adolescents?
Currently, or what we should be?
What we should do.
Well, certainly you have to be starting in the home with education.
All right, I got to wrap it. But
Absolutely.
Christian Meade, you guys can continue this.
There we go.
All right.
Probably will.